For more on this, we can speak to Rami Khouri. He's a journalism professor at the American University of Beirut. He joins us via Skype from the Lebanese capital. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. So perhaps a somewhat awkward meeting there between Pompeo and Angela Merkel in Berlin. We know that the US and Germany are at odds on a number of key international issues, chief among them Iran. Would the US take the step of penalising anyone associated with this mechanism that the Europeans want to put in place to bypass US sanctions? Would the US take a step like that?
Judging them by their behavior, they probably would. They've done things to their allies in Canada, Mexico, Europe, other places, raising tariffs and doing other things. So they probably would if they think it's going to achieve their objectives in Washington. The problem is the United States is getting increasingly isolated around the world and being seen as a bully who's pushing its own policies and prepared to hurt other economies really seriously. With Germany, for instance, they're trying to get the Germans not to buy gas from Russia, which the Germans want to do, and they're telling people they can't buy oil from Iran and other things like that with China and Huawei and things of that nature. So it's becoming a global issue, and the Germans, the Russians, the Chinese, Indians, others are going to at some point get together and push back.
The US perhaps isolated in some parts of the world, but certainly still, President Trump certainly appears to have allies in the Gulf, and he seems to have certainly empowered a number of countries in the region. We see now the organization, the OIC meeting, their meeting is currently getting underway, and obviously Iran was front and center of the recent summit in Mecca. What are your expectations from these meetings?
Very little from the OIC meeting. The OIC is not a very robust organization. It's okay on technical things. They align postal policies and training issues and stuff like that, but they don't get into serious political and ideological confrontations, and they've never really done anything of that nature. The three summits, the three gatherings taking place in Saudi Arabia this week are all public relations exercises. The Saudis are genuinely afraid of Iran. Most of the world thinks that fear is highly exaggerated. But the Americans and the Israelis and the Saudis seem to agree on this, and therefore they keep pushing this line. And most of the rest of the world is saying, look, if Iran is doing bad things, there's ways to deal with it, such as the agreement that they had 4 years ago, or go to the Security Council and get sanctions, which the world did some years ago as well. But this unilateral pushing, bullying, I mean, the United States is trying to smash the Iranian economy by preventing it from selling oil. Is quite extraordinary. And therefore, the Iranians, of course, are going to push back. They're not going to sit there and let a one-sided confrontation take place where the U.S. squeezes Iran and tries to strangle it, and it does nothing. So the OIC is not going to do anything really serious on this.
No, but I suppose the worrying thing is that the economic pressure that the US is exerting on Iran is also accompanied by military pressure. They've been deploying warships to the region, but also the month of May has been quite extraordinary in the way some of these tensions have played out. You've had Iran being accused of sabotaging warships, of targeting Saudi assets. Even if you're saying that Saudi Arabia fears Iran, I mean, even if Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United States don't want a war, is there any way of coming off this collision course?
Well, there is only one way, which is to do it through diplomacy and to sit and talk about. There are genuine, legitimate complaints about Iranian policies, some Iranian policies. And there's equally strong complaints about American policies, especially now with the American attempt to strangle Iran economically. So they have to sit down and negotiate. There's a very slim chance that Qatar might emerge as a mediator. There's an serious attempt now to have Qatar, which has good ties with Iran, good ties with the United States. The Prime Minister of Qatar was at the meeting in Saudi Arabia today. So it's possible that might be a route to do this. The Kuwaitis have tried to do it before between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and that didn't work very well. But now with Iran, you need more serious mediation, and that's the only way to do it. Sit down and discuss these issues and reach a diplomatic agreement. The Americans are waging war against Iran through their sanctions, unilateral sanctions, and they're expecting Iran to sit down and just watch it on TV, and that's not going to happen. They're going to push back. They're going to fight back. Their proxies are going to do things, and some of these things we saw in the last a couple of weeks, these attacks against the pipelines in Saudi Arabia, against the ships in the Gulf, airports in the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. These are almost certainly retaliatory acts against what the United States and the Saudis and Emiratis are doing against Iran. And they're terrible. They shouldn't happen. Neither side should be attacking the other. But it's not realistic for one side, like the Saudis today were saying, we want to have relations without interference in other people's internal affairs. And the Saudis have been bombing Yemen for 3 years and boycotting Qatar and helping other wars around the region, as the Emiratis have too, and many other people have in the region as well, including Iran and the Egyptians and others. So the political statements that are being made are really not credible by almost any of the actors, unfortunately.
Thank you, Rami Khouri, for sharing your thoughts, joining us there from Beirut.